I see any of the late nighters from last night? No. Well, if I'm the only one who made it, that would be pretty impressive. All right, formal good morning, everyone. I hope everybody has a good morning. And since the zope community managed not to have their own conference anymore, and the Plone conference really represents almost a zope conference as well, I thought it was a great idea to give a State of Zope 3 talk at the Plone conference, and because, of course, it's very relevant to you, at least to the integrator. How do you call this? The integrators and the developers on the Plone community. So, and I subtitled this today, Changing Dynamics, because I think that's really what happened in the past 18 months. Okay, so the prehistoric past. So in case you don't know, you haven't been around that long, we started Zope 3 development officially as a community in January 2002 with the first sprint, which was the internationalization sprint, and Andreas was there. I don't know whether Frederick and I I can never remember his name. It's always so long. The guy who does the other internationalization software, David, right? David John. I counted the number of sprints that we did, and I know there are already some that are not in that list. So I counted 42 sprints till today that we used to develop Zope 3. And then we made the first Zope release, which we remember, we had this X in front of it, 3.00, in November 2004. At least that's what the websites claim it was. And we had other releases. Actually, we didn't do so bad, right? We had one in 2005, and then and then 2 and 6. The problem is we are nearing the end of 2008, and 3.4 is not in sight. So, and I'll go into that. Okay, so what happened in the last 20 months? Well, we had the Zope explosion. We moved the entire Zope tree into small packages, and then we also developed this thing called the known good set, or KGS, which I'm not sure. I heard yesterday about the releases of Plone. When you use the extends call, I'm pretty sure you switched also to a KGS, right? Based on the Zope 3 one. We worked a lot on API stabilization and bug fixing and just making it very solid. Also, Martin Fasen, when I asked for some feedback, said, well, Grok has only been around for 24 months. So if you look at the last 18 to 20 months, then Grok, pretty much everything that we see of Grok happened in that time frame. And I think that had very positive effects. And we developed a lot of add-on packages. So I thought it would be cool to produce all sorts of little statistics. And I did this all based on check-ins. 149 people contributed out of the 290 that I could find ever contributed to the Zope repository. Of those, 77 were new contributors that signed the contributor agreement and checked in at least once. We made in those last 20 months about 27,000 check-ins. And now the total amount of packages, which was, I think, the most amazing number to me, is 581. That counts, all the Zope 2 packages and everything. That's just for the entire repository. And then I thought, like, around in March 2007, we were done with the explosion. Even since then, even if I take this splitting up of the Zope 3 tree out, 283 new packages appeared for other purposes. I'll look at this in a second. And we made 1,331 releases based on tags in the repository.
Just 6 more.
Probably so. So I voted only on one slide. That only counts till October 8th when I did that. So and then I looked at PyPy, and I looked at the trough classifiers and did that. So in PyPy, actually I looked at our custom index. We had 5,199 packages in there, and I don't know, the trough classifiers can, of course, double count things, right? Because you can have multiple framework or categories. But I don't think, I don't know, does Plone usually put in zope 2 and zope 3 as trough classifiers as well, or does it just do Plone as framework?
Depends. They did a free-for-all.
Okay. Well, I know since I did most of the zope 3 packages, I know we didn't do this. So there might be a lot of double counting within the Plone packages in that case. But if, let's say there was not significant double counting, the result is that we make up about a quarter of the Python community in terms of packages, right? And I think that's an indicator. We always get criticized for, oh, yeah, zope, there's not much buzz around it anymore. The trends go down if you look at Google. And I know it was because Nate and I sat down like last year and we did this. We looked at Google and, oh, it was going down. But then it's really interesting. Would you consider that Python loses attractiveness and user base right now? No. Interestingly enough, Python has exactly the same type of curve that zope has when you look at the Google statistics. And what Nate and I figured out is probably the cause is that there's more documentation around and people have other channels of getting at information and look in different ways at the software. We have found that almost all mature software, including Java and the commercial ones, had exactly the identical downward trend. And only the new and hot things had this really strong upward trend in Google. So don't believe the Google statistics. They are not representative in the sense of the popularity of a software or of a thing. Okay, all right, so this got a little bit messed up since the screen is not quite the same as when I produced it. Since April 1st, 2007, when the explosion stopped, we had a lot of new packages. I think the two numbers I bolded there is Z3C, so 99 packages. So the community as a whole contributes quite a bit. But another interesting number, I mean, whether you like zope or not, is the CEC namespace saw 32 new packages. And otherwise, not many companies, other than Lovely, really contribute to the zope repository. And I think that's unfortunate. I think this shows that we should a lot more, that a lot more people who do serious zope 3 work or do zope 3 packages should really contribute back so that people share it. A lot of my packages, since I'm a contributor, of course, go to the Z3C namespace, and there are definitely some company work in there. But like as companies, we really should put more into our repository collective for other people to share and see and work on it. Then I checked out how many releases based on tags everyone did, and we can see Andreas is by far the most active zope 2 developer or release guy, and the reason Christian, Toine, and I have so many releases is because we did all the zope 3 packages. So Christian released a lot of the beta 3.4.0 beta packages after the explosion, and I created all the final ones, and I created also a lot of the packages in order to make all the test failures go away, which I'll go into in a second. But you know, it's interesting. Farft, if you haven't seen him, I think he caused some stir with you guys, right? He wrote this zope 3 based clone-like CMS, and he just has a lot of packages, and you know, what I would say is a young programmer syndrome. There's a lot of little things, and that's his own thing. Unfortunately, he's not integrated enough. Other than that, I think it's great that so many people feel free to do releases via the zope 3 repository. By check-ins, it goes down quite quickly. So there are top contributors, and the reason Filicon and Toine are up there again is because they did the explosion and they just had a lot of check-in. Actually, Christian told me once, he actually wrote a script which went through all this and did the initial split up. And so he has at least a few hundred check-ins that were automated. But we also see, Wichert and Hanush and so on making check-ins to the zope repository, which makes me really happy to see that not only, the zope 3 guys are doing work. And Andreas is, again, high up there. Okay, so now that we have seen some numbers. Eggification. So the goal was to split up zope 3 into all small packages because, again, zope 3's mission was to be more Python friendly, right? We want to be more Pythonic and we want to play nice with the community. And once we had a story with packages and eggs, we wanted to play on that level nicely too. All that wouldn't have been possible without the distutils and setup tools work. And as far as I can tell, when I looked at the repository, and that I couldn't figure out exactly, they started this in February 2006, which sounds about right. So we are more than 2 years into this, and I looked at it at some zope app packages. The last ones were converted around in 2007. Oops. So unfortunately, this caused a lot of problems for us. Well, no other serious project had done that, and the tool chain was absolutely not there at the beginning. So out of a need, and I think it was also totally uncoordinated, like Zope Corp and GoSapt and Filicon, they decided, oh, let's just do this. This is a great idea. Right? Let's do it. And at the beginning, it was great because the packages that you had, they all linked to the main zope 3 tree, so people could keep working as they were used to it. Well, then in 2007, they decided, oh, this is not the best way of working. This causes us a lot of problems. So let's just not talk to anyone and move all this code into the packages and now put the external links into the zope 3 tree. I think it was totally under-evaluated of what that cost, and it cost pretty much for anyone else who used the trunk or branches of the zope 3 tree a whole lot of pain, and it basically brought them all, including me and Roger and a couple others, to a screeching halt. Because there was also no documentation on how to switch to X-based development or anything like that. So luckily, ZC Buildout came around. I found 112 build-out related recipes on PyPy, which is great, right? I mean, it's unbelievable how fast that tool was accepted by the community at large. And Philip wrote the zope 3 project and Grok project like little generation tools, right, to generate at least the bare bones of an application. Of course, that has its own problems since it's only a specific configuration, and it really doesn't represent anything that, at least for the zope 3 project tool, it doesn't include the best practices that we use today. Another huge problem we had, you might remember, was this, that the PyPy server from python.org was totally unreliable. We had entire days, we had scenarios where we would be totally unproductive, including our real work, for half a day because the PyPy server was down. And I wasn't using packages at that time so much, only for small projects like C3C Form. But Zope Corp was really hurting, for example, and the lovely guys and so on, they were just down. So Jim wrote ZC Mirror Cheese Shop / Simple, a typical Jim name, by the way, right? And then Andreas said, oh yeah, I can do much better, PyPy Mirror. So, and they provided scripts to copy the package index. And I'm not sure whether the Python org site now uses those scripts or whether they wrote their own, but they're producing now, thanks to that initial work, also a static mirror for their package delivery. which goes, of course, much less down and is much faster. So that was a good save on that side. However, we still have a few problems, or we had some few problems. We have complex package interdependencies, because when we developed in the tree, it didn't really matter how clean the separations between the packages were. And I mean, it's easy to say, oh yeah, you should have looked at this and so on, but it's also very hard. I mean, you know, keeping packages nicely separated and organized is a very, very hard problem. I mean, I'm even struggling with that right now at Kias. It's just very, very hard to keep this, and if you have new developers coming in, not aware of this package hierarchy that you're trying to produce, then it's a very hard battle. So what happens even today still is that if you pull in a certain package like a zope app package, you get about 60 other ones. Actually, if you get a zope app package, it's more like 70. But if you, 78, right. So there's this magic number, and Marius Getminas wrote this like this little graph tool in GTK showing the dependencies, and they're really these bubbles. I think there's a 60 packages bubble for zope dot, maybe IATN or so, security, and then there's this larger bubble if you want the zope app stuff. And we'll have to get rid of this. We have to at least create smaller bubbles, right? It's very difficult, but GTK, ActDeps, and Chris has also developed some tools and some techniques. So we should keep working on this. Luckily, we have other things that start helping. ZopeCorp wrote the exclude directive. So we now can say exclude the browser package and only use the API registrations. And that would allow not, you could unlist a dependency and maybe. So there's this evil thing in setup tools called extra includes, right? Where you can say, oh, if you want to use that functionality of the package, you need these extra other packages, and it's considered an ugly hack because it's not proper dependency management. However, I think we'll have to use it a little bit in order to make progress here. And also, Roger and I developed the Zope application management packages so that we do not have to use Rotterdam anymore. So for our project, it was really bad because we wrote C3C form, but because of certain dependencies, we had to still install Zope app form on Zope Formula we didn't, but Zope app form. And it was like, we just wrote this form framework and I have to still import this other one because of the dependencies. So we developed the XAMPP stuff, and now we can actually have a much smaller dependency tree, which is nice. And the other big thing that blew up about a year ago, actually, was we had no version management. So till then, it was assumed that the latest release on PyPy is a thing that works with everything. And you want always the latest release. And if you didn't want the latest release, you're screwed. Or if the latest thing doesn't work with everything else, you're also screwed. And so that became an issue, right? Because we have about 200 packages that get pulled in a typical Zope 3 project. And even the package tests themselves pull in about 80. So, and then we had this scenario that ZopeCorp said, and Go said and said, oh, but it's no problem. We support specifying versions, pinning versions. And initially that surfaced in the form of, in setup tools, when you say your dependency, you specify the version there. Well, that was great for the people who put the version in there, because they developed this set of versions that worked for them. But that wasn't publicly communicated, so nobody else had that. And I was arguing very, very hard about a year ago, saying, no, we cannot do this. We can never specify a version in setup PY, so that it allows people to develop these sets of versions that work together. And then we have to publicly communicate them. And I had a great example. Benji York and I were working together on test browser. And he said, oh, the tests are passing for me, and I'm running it. No, the tests are failing for me. And I'm going to sit down and I say, what versions of things are you using? And he said, like this and this. And I'm like, where's that combination coming from? So like, oh yeah, we maintain this at ZopeCorp, it's this really nice thing, and we are just happy with it. I'm like, oh, that's great. So now So now nobody can help you develop your packages anymore. So it was a real inhibitor for contribution as well. So, and as I mentioned, it caused a lot of disarray about last October, and it was caused by Roger checking in using Windows some packages of zope app container, I think, some version of zope app container. And well, it turned out that setup tools had a bug and produced zip files that could not be unzipped on a Linux system. So he tested. It was not even his fault, right? He tested. He said, "All was happy, great, works all." And then, you know, the next morning you come in and he had 70 emails from people complaining that the package broke, and we didn't have a KGS, so they couldn't go back. So there was a lot of bitching, and I think some really aggressive communication going on, which I think was nobody's fault, and you know, it was just the fact of missing tools. So at that point, I had it, and I said, we have to come up with a solution. And I called Jim and I said, like, what can we do? And of course, as I expected, Jim had thought about the issue, of course. He just didn't have time to do anything about it. And so we said, okay, we'll have to provide a way that we can communicate something that is stable. We have to keep track of the version of each package that we care about and make sure that the versions we choose all work together as a whole. And the nice thing is zope 3 as a base is the base for now Plone, for zope 2, and so on. So if we develop that, that should be possibly be reused by these communities that sit on top of zope 3. And so those were like our design goals. And Jim told me already that he had the extents and some of the other features in build-out to make this work. And so we went about it. And what we produced originally was an index. I basically forked a little bit mirror G-shop / simple to always only show the versions that we listed. Then Chris came along, and for repos, they wanted only a minimal index because they used things a little different. So we produced all these different outputs to make it work for however people wanted to use it. We have a version block, right? So you can say extends and version CFG, and then it puts in only those versions. And that's, by the way, what I'm using these days. And it creates a nice little page and everything. So, okay, so the zope 3 KGS is meant to maintain the versions of all packages that are on svnzope.org. Now, we have not included all of them yet, simply for time reasons. Testing them against each other is very, very hard. Oh yeah, that's another goal we had. We want to test the configuration. So the tools generate a nice little build.cfg that you can run and run all the tests against each other. Let's see, I'm trying to turn the internet on. We also had an introduction URL now where we can keep track of the releases. Let me see whether I can get online. And I don't know, does Plone already use this zope 3 KGS now as a base? Are you guys maintaining your own KGS already? You don't? I thought there was some talk. I know the Grok people finally switched to it.
Maybe the Plone 3.2 release was.
Okay, all right. I know the Grok people finally went over to it, and Martin complains a little bit that we don't communicate enough when we bring out a new release candidate or anything. So we'll have to be better about communicating, that's for sure. But they're using it, and I think they're quite happy with it as well. So right now we're managing 170 packages in the KGS, so much more than was in the original zope 3 release. And right now we have 12,000 tests of those. These 170 packages produce 12,000 tests. And Marius and Christopher Kumbel. Okay. They worked very, very hard of fixing the final test failures. So we actually have all 12,217 tests passing. There are some random failures due to ZIO and async stuff that only happen on a very busy system. But in general, but in general, They work. So you can go to zope3.path.lt, which Mario set up, and you can see a build bot that he runs daily.
Stephanie, cable runs in, you plug in.
Oh, that's cool. So I wanted to show you that. I'm not doing it in time. Let's yeah. So, well, first of all, yes, we do have a plan for zope 3.4. At least, I think I have one, and I can convince people that there is one. So I said, okay, that's cool. Now we have the KGS, and if you write a few more tools, we can also use it for release management. And exactly that's what we did. I wrote a tool that updates the zope 3 tree. So you go to your versions and say, update zope 3 tree, and it does, and we can produce a classic zope 3 release in case you care and you don't want to upgrade. But then we also have all these other tools to do package releases. And as you can see, we actually have been working on this stuff. So the first KGS-based release was beta 2 in November last year, and we had a new release as recent as this September. And we are committed to do an old release. But the problem is, as always with us, we as always with us, we have no commitment to time because nobody cares enough about it, and I'm busy, so I cannot tell you when it is going to finally happen. And here's what let's look at what's done and what we have done and what is done. So we have the KGS. We have the release process in place. We have backward compatibility worked out. I mean, all the really hard problems and the time-consuming problems are all done. What needs to be done is I have to be able to produce a changelog. I'm not going through 170 packages and write down which version changes and go into each changes file to figure out what's going on. But luckily, when I released all the zope packages and most of the Z3C packages, I used the same naming conventions everywhere. I was very consistent about that. So I think with a little bit of effort, we can write a tool that goes in, looks at the changes file, compiles the rest, and pulls out the information. And then at least you have something that you can process, you know, and produce a changelog. So that's something that has to be done. And the KGS side has to be tweaked, multi-phasen requested, and rightly so. We don't put dates right now behind our releases. So we want to at least put some dates behind all this. Yeah, and then just write the release announcement and the usual stuff. But I'm not so worried about this. So, okay.
Will you be around for sprinting on this?
No, unfortunately we have Kias has an internal release on Monday, and my son's first birthday is on Sunday as well, so I cannot hang around. However, if you're interested on that, I mean, these are really scripts. I mean, all you need is Python knowledge to do this. There's no zope involved at all. I can definitely point you in the right direction on what to do. So, okay, I think we go to connection. Let's see whether if I go back. So I don't know whether you've seen that page before. So here basically we list all the releases, and it's all auto-generated and it's statically served. Right? And you can click on these different things, like you can click on the version CFG, and it also tells you on how to use it in build-out. I mean. So, and we want to put at least. Oh, I also want to put a skin around this, like the new zope org skin would be nice, and the date. So those are like two main things that go here. And then, of course, another link with the changelog once we have it. And if you go to path. So Marius tells me this is a pretty old server, so, uh-oh. But you see, the Python 2.4, 2.5 here, they're working, and those have, if you look at the failures, it's just a 0 failure. And Marius said it's undeterministic and it only happens on servers with high load. It has something to do with the async loops not working right. Another Another problem was that we really fixed, there was an old standing bugs where async core loop cancellations were interfering with each other in the tests. So Christopher and Marius did a lot of work in that regard to make this work. Okay. So we did the plans already. Oh God, I'm late, right? Oh well. Okay, trends. So we are looking out for stability. We want to mainly fix bugs these days and not so much new features, so that sub-communities like Clone and Zope and so on, Zope 2 and so on, can really rely on these packages. We did a lot of work with performance, especially the lovely guys. They did a lot of caching and resource combining and all sorts of things. We have blob support now. Zope Corp wrote a bunch of nice tools looking at how the ZODB performs. We have rel storage, which is really a great benefit. We have the object, like just last sprint, where was it, Andrea? In Freiburg, exactly. Andreas put the gun in Dieter's head and said, like, you have to finally commit some of your changes back to the community. So and then they invited Jim, and they got together, and it was actually productive, and they had some really great object cache improvements. Malte developed Z3CPT, and Kias is really eager to see what's going on with that, and what we actually asked Malte to update all these other packages that use page templates to make this integrated very quickly. Scalability, we have memcached support now. That works pretty well. We have good async solutions. Kias will bring out an Amazon-based one soon. We're also developing a sharding solution. So sharding is basically, comes from MySQL, and basically they said, all right, if MySQL and Postgres and all these open source databases want to compete against Oracle, we cannot compete in having one large database and deploy it on the biggest possible server, because there's no way there's enough time in the community to make all these processor and memory optimizations. So what happens instead? And of course it doesn't scale for large websites anyways. That was the next thing. So what they said is like, okay, let's create smaller databases and just have a lot of small databases do the same type of thing, and it scales also much better. And so that's known much as sharding. You take a user, for example, and all the data around them, and you put it in the same package. I mean, in the same database. For ZODB, this problem is of course a lot easier because of its object-oriented nature. So that's good. I'll get to this. Well, and you should look out for it if you're interested, or come and talk to me about it. Portability, we have good Whiskey support, we have good Paster support, or at least we will have soon for Zope Server. We had a Google Summer of Code project this year that converts all the Zope packages to Jython. That was pretty successful, I think. And people have tinkered with the app engine like Capil and some others. We also did a lot of security stuff. Well, I guess I care these days a lot about it. We have a good password utility that actually we deployed for two Swiss banks. We had Roger and I worked for a Swiss bank where the product manager was the former head of security for that bank, and he approved our methods of doing passwords and everything. So that has been blessed by at least somebody who knows a lot about security. A 10 implementation, like typical for European banking systems. Last year at the foliage sprint, Daniel Blackburn started the security tool that actually looks really good now. You can go in, point it to a location on your site, and it tells you all about the security settings and where they're coming from and where to look for them and so on. Very nice. GoSep registration and the key management infrastructure that provides a PCI and HIPAA compliant encryption system. And unfortunately, the common criteria certification was canceled out of lack of interest, and the sponsor dropped, and nobody else was able to pick up the rest of the bill, which is really unfortunate. Deployment, we have build out now, we have a lot of recipes, and if you care about, like especially when you do EC2 deployment, you want to have a look at source release, which takes your package and all dependencies and puts it in one large tarball archive. And so you can just have this thing, ship it to your instance, unpack it, build it, and you're done. And you don't have dependencies on third-party websites to be available and web services to be available, which is nice. Okay, so how is this all relevant to Plone? Well, I mentioned before, a lot of the zope 3 packages are already used by you guys. We have some integration work. Daniel Nuri just started plone.z3cform, so that's a good example of how this is being used. Buildout also provides a deployment story for Plone, clearly, as we saw yesterday in the lightning talks. And the stability and performance tuning that we do definitely will benefit Plone in the future as well. So for the future, I think especially Chris and Tress will be extremely happy about this, right? We want to fix our dependency mess. We want to make it a lot easier to get into zope 3, which is, like, even I have to go into one of my previous projects and copy everything over because I don't remember all the package dependencies and configuration setups. We want to stabilize further, concentrate on scalability, and I really hope, and that's like a call out to you guys, have more add-on packages shared with the rest of the community in the zope repository. I really would like to see a lot more. Okay, so we have some challenges in this world, and actually it's really interesting. I chatted with Jim just before the conference exactly about that. So at least Zope Corp and Kias and some other companies I know, we built a lot of rich JavaScript-based applications these days. So Zope as the web application server becomes a little less relevant. But Zope, the middleware server, becomes thus so much more relevant. And we have to start making a transition to that. And I'm really surprised, honestly, that I haven't heard more talk about this at the Plone conference here. Because, you know, you're talking, still you build an old style website and you talk about the CSS, but I haven't heard much talk at all about web services and how we go to a much more middleware type system. We need a lot more JS support. I mean, we really suck, right? So we have done some work and we have figured out some nice solutions, and I can talk about this in the Z3C forum talk a lot more, but we have to do a lot more. Okay, and documentation as always. I think that can never be missing from that list. In case you wonder, I've talked to a bunch of you already. I joined a startup, Kias.com, and we are still in stealth mode, so I cannot tell you a lot of details, but look out, I'm probably going to give talks in the upcoming conferences next year about the stuff we do. And if you want to join or want to apply, we have 2 offices, one in San Francisco and one in New York. And feel free to talk to me if you're interested in looking for a job. Okay, done. I went classically over, all right. Any questions?